you get married and your dream is to spend the rest of your lives together. Okay, that's the dream. My mom and dad were married for 61 years before my dad passed away. Karen's parents have been married for 60 years. We've been married, this is our 40th year of marriage. And so we've experienced that. You know, our parents have, we've experienced that. But we know so many people have not experienced that. You know, they desire to spend the rest of their lives together, but a lot of people now have tremendous amount of fear and anxiety of, will our marriage last? And so in this session, I want to talk to you about a dynamic that's very common in relationships. It's a sprint mentality versus a marathon mentality. When we get married, when we meet each other, we typically are in a sprint mode rather than a marathon mode. Marriage is a marathon. My mom and dad married for 61 years. You can't sprint that long. 70 pounds ago and 50 years ago, I used to run track. And so, you know, when I ran track, I mean, the sprinters, you could go quick for a short distance, but the marathoners had a completely different mentality. And so many people today get married in a sprint, and what they find is that everything's passionate, everything's wonderful, everything's incredible right before it crashes. But the marathon mentality says, it's not what we can make happen, it's what we can keep happening. What can we keep happening for 61 years? What can we keep happening for the rest of our lives, rather than what can we make happen for a few months or a few years, you know, while we're falling in love and while we're securing the relationship or something like that, and then the thing falls apart. Marriage is like two rivers that come together. When you're dating, you're like parallel rivers. You're adjoining each other, you're examining each other, you think you know each other, but when you get married, it's like two rivers that come together, and there's the immediate crashing, you know, just the personalities, the different people, the different, you know, desires, whatever you want to say, personas that come together, and there's a lot of turbulence, there's a lot going on. But what happens is the longer you're married, God's way, in the marathon mentality, the more you become one, the more it becomes peaceful, it becomes joyful. And when Karen and I got married, we married in a sprint. And what I mean by sprint is, at 16 years old, we started dating, we fell in love. We had this, you know, we fell in love. I mean, we fell head over heels in love with each other. And that lasted for a year or two. And then our sprint, we became exhausted. I began to, you know, be mean to Karen, mistreat her. And after marriage, it was a miracle we got married in the first place, but after, you know, a couple of years of marriage, you know, we thought we'd made a mistake. I mean, and we were out of love. I mean, we were completely out of gas. So we completely understand when a person says, I'm out of love and I'm hopeless in this relationship, because you get married and you want it to last, you know, you want your marriage to last, but once you've experienced the crashing, once you've experienced the end of the passion and those things, the devil's always there to tell you that you made a mistake. Well, by God's grace, we made it. I mean, we've made it. Again, this is our 40th year of marriage. We're in love. We don't have a perfect marriage, but we have a great marriage. And we're in love, and we know that we're married for the rest of our lives, and we have the skills and the tools to work through our difficulties. And that's part of what we're going to be talking about in this seminar. And so there's two things I want to change in you, that I know it's God that will change it, but there's two things in this session that I want to change in you, if they're there. One is, I want you to change your sprint mentality into a marathon mentality. To understand, whatever you did at the beginning of your relationship to fall in love, if you didn't have the right mentality, which very few people do, you become exhausted, you fall out of love, you become disillusioned. You do whatever you have to do for the first few months or the first few years, and then life happens, and you fall out of love, and then you get into the fear mentality. This is the second thing I want to change. I want your fear to turn into faith. People today are more fearful of marriage than ever before. And listen, if half the planes in the air crashed, you would be afraid of flying, right? And because half of all marriages are ending in divorce, people are more afraid than ever before of marriage. And if they get married, they're afraid of divorce. You have a 100% chance of success in marriage. You can make it in marriage. It's not luck, it's not fate. Every person can succeed in marriage if we just do the right things, and they're really not complicated.
this program today, and we're talking about lifelong love and how our marriage can last a lifetime and how God made marriage to be a marathon and not a sprint. And you see in our world today so many people, and I feel so sorry for those people because Karen and I were exactly the same way when we first met and married. And they fall in love and everything's just so phenomenal and they're just, absolutely head over heels in love with each other and all that's great. But then you see where months or a few years later, maybe they're bitter, they're angry, they're out of love, or maybe they've even divorced by then. We have a photographer we know really well, and he said that increasingly he'll go do wedding photos, for people getting married, and before he delivers the photographs, the couple is already divorced. And this is an example of the sprint mentality that says, we just have this passionate, incredible relationship, but it just doesn't last. Listen, God made marriage to last. He made your marriage to be a marathon where you can stay in love. But listen, the source of that love is God. You can only get so much out of your spouse and so much out of yourself. But God is the eternal source of love. And one of the things that I said in this teaching is God's the only person that always loves your spouse and really loves all of us perfectly and permanently and powerfully. I want you to think about that for just a minute. God always is going to love your spouse. Now, your feelings may come or go. Your spouse's feelings may come or go. And truly the reason I believe that so many people get into the sprint and then they end up so disillusioned is because they just run out of gas. The source of their love was the wrong source. And it can only last so long. When you're tapping into the wrong well, it's just going to last for so long. You put that straw in a shallow bottle, you're not going to be able to suck on it very long until it goes dry. God is an eternal source that will never run dry. And He's always 24 hours a day stable and present and gracious and loving. And when Karen and I got married, I got so disillusioned because I just wasn't getting out of her what I wanted, even though I was head over heels madly in love with her a few years earlier. And we were in that sprint of passion and intimacy and all those kinds of things. We were out of love. We were on the brink of divorce. The only reason when Karen and I are asked the secret of our 40 years of marriage, our answer is God. God is, and we love each other very much, but it's God in the middle of us. It's God in the center of our relationship that makes it work. Now listen, you may be a married couple watching this right now and you're saying, we made that mistake and we're going to correct that. Good for you. But did you know that you can make that decision all by yourself? Even if you're the only person trying in your marriage, once you turn to God and you make Him your source, your marriage is going to change. When you change, your marriage is going to change. So don't become overwhelmed or discouraged. Don't turn your heart away from your marriage. Turn your heart toward God and turn your heart toward your spouse, but make God your primary source and get out of that sprint.
Thank you for joining us. Experience the life-changing series Lifelong Love Affair on CD or DVD. Follow your interests and get social by connecting with Jimmy and Karen and the Ministry of Marriage Today on Twitter. Marriage Today's latest book, Lifelong Love Affair, is an essential tool couples can turn to again and again for inspiration and strength. Order your copy today. Become a rock-solid partner today and equip yourself with the tools you need for a successful marriage. $14, $28, or $56 per month. Choose the partnership level that's right for you. Become a rock-solid partner today.